Women. A natural resource that's unlimited in the world. Women. Educated, successful, useful. So why not hire women when they benefit the community? In America, women work to support their families just like men. Women have the opportunity to choose their career choice because for women, they are nearly unlimited. Women have the right to make their own decisions for what is best for them. No matter what the career choice is, it generally affects the community in a positive way. In Afghanistan, things do not work that way. Afghanistan women are not allowed to have jobs. Many Afghan women have husbands that do not support their families, but the women have no choice but to just sit back and watch things fall apart. The Taliban's first decree on women's rights on employment came in 1997, banning all women from working in public places. The health sector, where the Taliban had already imposed gender segregation, suffered most. If Afghan women began to work, their country would be affected with economic growth. In the 1940s and 1950s, you saw increasing numbers of Afghan women employed as nurses, doctors, and teachers. Afghan-Soviet relations had grown favorable during the early 1950s through increased trade agreements between the two countries. Large sums of Soviet foreign aid and technical assistance indicated a modernizing effort with Afghanistan. By the late 1950s, women were increasingly encouraged to become economically active in order to help Afghanistan achieve its targeted development goals. These advancements for Afghan women were sustained throughout the 1970s and enforced by the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan after it obtained power in 1978. During this period, significant numbers of women were employed by universities, private corporations, and airlines. In fact, through the early 1990s, women were teachers, government workers, and medical doctors. Women took up a little over 75% of the nursing and teaching occupation. Consequently, with only about 25% of the employees still hired as males, the economy is going to decrease. Currently, midwives are being retrained to provide basic reproductive health services at health posts and health centers and are specializing in cesarean births at district hospitals. Before these midwives were retrained, women in labor had to rely on the small number of male nurses that knew what they were doing. Poor health conditions and malnutrition made pregnancy and childbirth exceptionally dangerous for Afghan women. NGOs operating in Afghan after the fall of the Taliban in 2002 found the shortage of female health professionals to be a significant obstacle to their work. With fewer female health professionals in employment, the distance women have to travel for medical attention increased while provision of antenatal clinics declined. Women worked as professors, lawyers, judges, journalists, writers, and poets. It was estimated that 25% of the government employees were female, and when compounded by losses in their sectors, thousands of men and women were affected. That little change had a devastating impact on household incomes, especially in vulnerable or widow-headed households, which were common in Afghanistan. Widows were affected especially by registrations on women's employment and movement. Although the Taliban issued an edict in 1999 allowing widows with no other means of support to take paid work, employment opportunities for these widows remained extremely limited. However, this employment was almost entirely limited to urban areas due to the passionate opposition to the economic freedom of women among tribal and religious leaders in rural areas. The ban on women's employment also affected boys' education, as the majority of teachers had been women. According to the NCEI, in the United States, 82% of teachers are female. A lack of women teachers is also an issue that concerns some Afghan parents, especially in more conservative areas. Elementary education for children, boys and girls, was shut down in Kabul, where virtually all elementary teachers were women. Some parents will not allow their daughters to be taught by men, but this often means that girls are not allowed to attend school, as the international aid agency Oxfam reported in 2007 that about 1/4 of Afghan teachers were women. Yet, in 2008, 28.5% of school teachers were women, and 15.2% of university teachers were women. The rate is slowly increasing for women, but it is still not the same. The number of teachers in Afghanistan has been low, without women having jobs. Before the Taliban ban on female employment, 70% of teachers in Kabul were women, 50% of the civil servants and college students were women, and 40% of the doctors were women. There is a convention that states that the right to work is an inalienable right of all human beings. As a result of the Taliban rule, a majority of the educated female professionals went abroad, creating considerable brain drain in the country, states a February edition of the New York Times. Women who were left behind faced deteriorating economic and social conditions, especially in the case of Afghanistan's 2 million widows. When the Taliban rule banned women from working, it actually had a large impact on males in Afghan too, because women were their teachers. In order for Afghanistan to grow economically,